Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm your host, Ellie, and this is my other host, William. And tonight, boy, we the closest we've ever been to World War III, with um, whispers around the capital of um, they no longer support Taiwan, which is very scary to most people. I'm saying no because we have the allies, and the allies are now looking at this administration is now a weakness, and that they have to pick up. Even the UK, BBC was saying that they might have to pick up where the United States have become weak. William, I don't know if you read that article. I mean, I should have grabbed it for tonight, but the UK
Oh,
seems to think that they're going to step up and replace the United States in protecting Taiwan.
so the BBC is the mouthpiece of the United Kingdom. And let's face it, King Charles wants to be king of the earth. So they're going to say whatever they need to say towards his end. They don't run U.S. foreign policy, although they'd like to. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
They yap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now,
They're like, when if you're going to be a home invader and you kick the door in and there's that yapping chihuahua, that's the UK.
mm-hmm.
On the world stage. I mean, they have a large landmass. They just don't have the military power to project. They've spent their money on other things. If you can't be a socialist and a world superpower at the same time, you would think they would catch on to this because they're the ones that stimulated the U.S. economy to become a world power, but they somehow just can't wrap their heads around it.
Yeah, well, you made a really good point. Um, with what we're seeing right now in the United States with this administration. Now, I'm not going to just point the finger at our president because it's the whole administration in itself. And I'm learning this more and more with the economics that you got to have the right people in the right spots. Now, Trump in a rally said, somebody asked him, how do you know that you're going to be able to fix what they've done? And he said he's got the right people in the right places to be able to fix things. And he's got a good point there, though.
So when Trump was president, you had a leadership. You had a single leader at the top that made the final decision. When you have a Democratic administration, I'm not going to say anything bad about this administration, particularly any one person, but when you have an entire group of people trying to drive foreign policy or whatever in the United States, it's going to seem schizophrenic because you've got too many people making too many decisions. You have to have a final leader make the final decision. You just don't have that here.
Yeah, and you only have 2 years of socialism before it becomes a communist country. That is written in Marxism and fascism. And, we're sitting right about 2 going into 3 years. And I mentioned to you before the show that we even, we had Blinken go over there and they usually make mincemeat of him. And then Biden comes out and someone asks him and he said, Jinping's a dictator.
Well, you're assuming we have a foreign policy.
Yeah. And, and so while this just cracked me up when I read about this one, is while we had Blinken was over there visiting Beijing, Chinese Premier Ling Guang began a 5-day trip to Germany, France on Sunday, arriving in Berlin. And, and so while they're over there, we're gonna, hey, let's go over there to Europe, and we're gonna Beijing, or Jinping, his premier is over there talking to Germany and leaders of Europe. And you
So
talk,
Europe decided to go the whole socialist route. Germany went all in, and now, they're in depression, and England can't come to their rescue. So in rolls China. What can we buy?
yeah, well, they said
Everything.
they felt honored that he was there,
Of course they do.
and it fully
All that
shows the
yen rolling
importance of
into
China.
Germany.
Yeah, and it fully shows that China is attached with relations with Germany. Yeah.
Well, it just means that China's smart enough to sell high and buy cheap,
Yeah,
and
and
buy
they didn't
low.
even have to. They didn't. You know what got me was I was waiting to hear the Belt and Road Initiative, and it wasn't there, and I was like, "Oh, we're in trouble now."
Well,
uh,
they've already got an Autobahn. They already have a high-speed train. All they have left to do is sell their industry.
yeah,
They already bought the port.
and with in Taiwan, I had to really look at Taiwan of what they're saying, and I know that there's not much. They're being really quiet on this, but then, like I said, the BBC came out, and also Japan and the Philippines all said, we're here for you. We're not going to go away. Now, I haven't heard anything from Australia, um, so now I think we're scrambling, going into this war with China of who is going to defend Taiwan, because it looks
Well,
like we're going to back away.
let me explain a little something to you about Asia. Asia is very big on saving face. They want to look like they want to look, okay? However, they want to project themselves. They don't like to be maligned, all right? That's that's the worst thing you can do to them. So even if we have a military foreign policy that's anti-China, pro-Taiwan, if you give them lip service out on the global stage, at least so that they're not losing face, it might be a good thing for them. So I'm not sure that what we're saying is what we're doing. We may be just helping them save face, just, to cool things down a bit. I hope.
Yeah. I don't know if I did this last night or not. This more and more they're coming out with the um, K KBI, which I've never heard of. It's Kansas Bureau of Investigation, like the FBI. Um, what they're looking into is, um, it took too long. Now I know watching court TV, William, when they run biological hazards like um, um, what it was is 100 letters containing a white substance hit Kansas Congress and
Oh, that
senators.
was that. Hold on. It'll pop into my head in a minute. Oh, darn it.
And they said it was
It's
mainly Republicans that were targeted, but it's the amount of time it took for the lab results to come back, say, no, nothing here to see. But a lot of them came down sick. And
yeah. Well, if
so
it was that stuff, it would have killed them.
anthrax, there you go. I'm thinking anthrax. Okay, so it wasn't
It's
anthrax,
anthrax. It is
but
anthrax. Yeah.
but they're
No,
not,
no, it's not.
the KBI. Yeah, KBI is not announced what it was that they found. They're saying it wasn't. It was harmful, but not. Okay, so
Well, anthrax is just a lethal killer. It
right.
they tested that out on during World War II out on one of the Shetland Islands to see, what it would harm. To this day, there's not a mammal on the Shetland Islands.
I mean, it could have just been some methamphetamines, but they said that it didn't.
Well,
there wasn't no biological
nothing left.
Substance.
What I'm saying is, if they'd got the white powder and it was anthrax, they'd just be gone. It might have been something else.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I was saying. They were, I think, from what I'm hearing from friends up in Kansas, that they are saying that it was like a speed type base, and they're thinking methamphetamines or crack or some type of powder that enough to scare them.
Anthrax.
Yeah.
A single spore of anthrax will kill you.
They said it was very deliberate and intentional. And they were even, some people were saying, well, I would open it, office workers, and they have recently left and quit. So there was something there. It did. So you were saying, well, was there a return address on these? Yes, it was to a local church. And it was to trick recipients into opening the letters. So it did make them sick, but it didn't kill them. So I think what they're saying is it was a warning to Kansas politicians. And none of them have really connected it to being any type of threat to vote on a bill or decide on a bill or to push any agendas. So they're not sure why they all got this. Or is this a trial run? See, that's my thing. If they could send it and they all opened it because it was a church, maybe they can send it, do another round and have the same thing, something not lethal. And then the third round, then send anthrax through. And then people will just open it up.
Well, whenever you roll in with something terribly illegal like that, it's usually used as either a dry run or an actual threat or an attack. So nothing gets wasted when evil moves forward. It's a all-encompassing thing. Evil is. It doesn't, it doesn't take days off. It doesn't respect holidays. It never sleeps. Evil is evil.
Yeah. And we're looking at nobody's really mentioned the border a lot of what's going on down there. And they were saying that the cartel pretty much had our border. Well, what they did is the feds ended up busting. And the feds, meaning the ones down there along the border with border agents and others that are trying to get rid of this cartel, not let them set up shop. They ended up taking out the Lopez crime family that had been illegal smuggling ring in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. So they took quite a few, and they're finding pretty much they're only sending these migrants to blue states. They said they're making them promises, telling them that this is where they need to go to be able to get the free handouts that is available. That if they go to some of the other states, they won't get it. But the big thing is they have basically busted them out with a lot of like a fentanyl factory. So they said the Lopez crime family could lead to arrest of others in the cartel along the border. So
well, the Central Valley in California is just infested with these cartel families, and they're having a terrible time. So we're likely to see a lot more of this into the future. The FBI needs to save face as well.
Yeah.
They're going to go for the lowest hanging fruit.
The cartel.
Yeah.
The other thing, William, is, and I forgot to mention this, is, while we had the Chinese ambassadors and premiers going to Europe. They were also um, talking with the Taliban and the Taliban central bank governors um, at the same time that
So,
they were over in Europe. So it was like when we went over there, they sent Chinese ambassadors and premiers over to all these different countries.
China's smart. When they go someplace, they litter diplomats all the way on the trip. So you'll have diplomats fall out in Dubai. You'll have diplomats fall out in Italy. You'll have diplomats fall out, in Central Europe, and then finally in Germany. And at the same time, they run an organized push for whatever it is they want. Now remember, Iran, Hezbollah, ISIS, all of them now want to do their banking through China because they want to launder their money through BRICS because it's opaque. It's not transparent like Western banks. So yeah, of course, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, the Afghan bank says that the head of this bank, he said, met with Chinese Ambassador Wang Yu in Kabul to look over economic of Afghanistan and China banking relations and transaction trades.
Let's talk about the Khyber Pass because we can't really go talk about Afghanistan without it. Now, the Khyber Pass is the ancient Silk Road from 3,000 years ago. It's where Genghis Khan came across Afghanistan up and into Europe. It's where everybody's passed. Peter the Great, not Peter the Great, but what's his name? Anyway, the great warlords of the past have all gone through the Khyber Pass. So right now, on the other side of Pakistan, where India and Pakistan and China all have a border there, China's trying to put a road through, and that's where the Indians have been fighting the Chinese, and so they want to come through at that point, and they want to have a major highway that comes all the way through the Khyber Pass and then up into Afghanistan, so they can fulfill their Belt and Road Initiative. And so, yeah, that's all going to be happen simultaneously. They're not just going to do their political and military wrangling there on the Indian-Pakistan Chinese border. They're going to try to do it all at once, so that once they can get that thing moving, they can move their industry in and lay those roads quick before any political change happens. So then they'll have their access. So this is ugly stuff out on the world stage, and European leaders and American leaders aren't used to this full court press. They're used to tippy-toeing into the future, not this long jump type political access and wrangling through the diplomats. They're used to just step after step, not this whole full court press every place at one time. China's good at this now.
Yeah,
they've got the money to do it, and our diplomats aren't ready. They're going to be caught flat-footed because they can't understand that type of action and reaction. Even the United States we've got lily pads all over the earth, but we move into those places a step at a time so as not to cause all kinds of diplomatic problems all over the world and destabilization. China doesn't have that problem. They don't care if they destabilize the entire planet.
And I've been saying for a long time about them acting as police. Their intelligence services even moved into 7 different places. And they said they found it in other countries. Also, it's not just the United States. Um, um,
You have to remember that China, the government of China, is not a government as much as it is a mafia.
mm-hmm.
It is run by the Chinese Tongs, ancient Tongs of thousands of years ago that have bought into this communist thing. But the people didn't change. And this is how mafias act. Mafias don't have borders. Mafias don't care about diplomacy. They'll land wherever they land. They do everything surreptitiously anyway, so it doesn't matter whether they have a diplomatic front. They're going wherever they want to go because the money's there. This is a mafia with a military.
Mm-hmm. And they said that now we're finding that they calling them Chinese service centers. Now they're located in San Francisco, Houston, Omaha.
Oh yeah,
St. Paul,
they'll service you.
Salt Lake City, St. Louis, Charlotte. All these centers
are. They'll service you with electric chairs. They'll service you with beatings. They'll service you just fine.
Yeah.
You'll want to get on that airplane. Trust us. That's probably their motto. You'll want to get on the plane. Trust us.
And then, we're seeing more and more the Chinese are finalizing plans to put troops 100 miles from U.S. mainland, Cuba. So they're finalizing moving troops now into Cuba. And this is where I think Biden's response was he's a dictator. I think this is where it came from.
So Cuba has a listening post. All right, they've always had a listening post. It was built by the Russians, but China wants to update it. So China is bringing in personnel and money. That's the important part, is the money part. And they're going to update that listening post into a full upgraded new satellite capable listening post like the United States or England or any of the major powers use. But they don't care about these small governments. They'll threaten them. They'll do whatever they have to gain access. And these people that don't have militaries that you can count on, militaries that don't need diplomacy to act, militaries just require an order. If you don't have that, China's coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're Venezuela, even though the military is the largest organization, they don't act on orders. They act on diplomacy from above.
Right. And China's it's not just one country, because they're calling it the Project 141 to expand military and logistical facilities around the world. So whether it's a police department here, it could be something else in another country. They're just using different names to be able, but in the long run, we did find out it's called Project 141.
The thing you have to remember about China is they're a one-stop shopping center. Arms, banking, economics, food,
resources,
transportation, the whole 9 yards, all at once.
Chips.
If you want it, they got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they cornered the market on it. As we were, when we put in that free trade agreement, boy, that was a big mistake. And, I was all against it because I knew what was going to happen. And what it is
favorite trade, the worst thing you can give to a communist power.
And the only thing we did, the first thing we seen was all of our automobile plants were shipped to Mexico. That was one of the first things we seen. I believe that was under Clinton. Am I right?
Well, I don't mind the maquiladoras down in Mexico with the Japanese automakers, American automakers. Mexico doesn't bother me. China does.
Well, I'm just saying we outsourced ourselves. We moved. Our plants were getting old, and instead of putting the money into it that they had and using infrastructure money, we could have.
Well,
We could have.
there's not. They don't have the what do you call the organizations that barter for these companies? I forgot the name of the institution just for a second, but they don't have lobbying powers in Mexico for wages
No.
and benefits, and we do here in the United States. So where do you think they're going to go if you're chasing the lowest cost labor and you're willing to go anywhere in the world? Where do you go? First is Mexico, second is China until you get thrown out of China for diplomatic reasons. Then it's India.
Yeah.
Then it's Pakistan. It's wherever the cheapest labor is until finally you end up back at home again.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. And so just to let everybody know, there's 7 precincts here now, and I've read you the cities. So China is moving in. It's just a matter of time of how many more cities. And it looks like they're all in a Democrat-owned city or sanctuary city. So, oh boy. So,
so those are probably the only ones you know about. But if you think there's not one in Salt Lake City, if you think there's not one, in Kansas City or even Little Rock, there's going to be one. You're just not going to hear about it.
And so they're trying right now. Oh boy. We just got through having a lot of the G summits, and they tried to block Greta Thunberg from making statements. They said hate speech, and now she's getting to where basically what she was told in 2014, 16, 18, and 2020 is about this world is going to end. And it would be, it was alarming, and they really did need her, and they paid her well for this. But now she's coming forward and she's going against them. And they said, we only have 5 years left before the world's going to end, and that was in 2018. So now she's finding out.
She got double crossed. She figured it out.
Oh yeah, and she's mad. And I'm like, go for it, girl. Get mad at them, because you got duped like a lot of people have over this.
She was just 5 years behind the rest of us.
Yep, that's it. And I think she just didn't. It didn't matter. She got the money, and she really believed in what she was being told, as naive teenagers do. I'm not saying all of them are naive, but I think she was a little naive into believing that in 2023 to 2025, the world would be so bad that we would be looking at destructing as far as climate goes, and it's not happening.
Wisdom comes with age, and we all know that there was always that individual that screamed, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky never falls. She just had to catch up with this whole climate alarmism is just they're crying wolf for power, and it's gonna fail on them. But the idea is to grab up as much power as you can before that happens.
Yeah. Boy, a lot to China today. They put one of their aircraft carriers in the Taiwan Strait to block everything today. That I did get late notice on um, from my
Well, they were
friend.
starting their partial blockade 3 weeks ago, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and this
you
came
got to
from
expect there's going
Taiwan.
to be birds out there
And
on the meridian.
um, uh,
So Taiwan or China has one problem when they put an aircraft carrier out there, and that's, the United States is still going to sail a destroyer right up through the middle of that strait.
yeah,
And
they're doing
who's
that.
going
And
to
then
run?
they had 19 aircraft near Taiwanese airspace that is
If,
crossing
if
over
you've got an
just that
aircraft
little bit.
carrier out there and a destroyer comes rolling up through there, what is it going to look like when an aircraft carrier has to move for a destroyer?
That's it.
It's going to look weak, and it's going to happen. And the United States are going to send a destroyer right up the center of that strait, and that aircraft carrier is going to have to step out of the way, or bad things will happen. So, yeah, go ahead, China, do what you're doing, because it's just going to look weak.
They
Because you
say
don't
that.
want to lose one of your three big aircraft carriers. One of your biggest aircraft carriers. You don't want to lose that some surface vessel. How bad would that look? You
Yeah.
got 60 stealth aircraft and you can't stop a single destroyer? Well, they can't strike the United States because that would be Third World War, so they're going to have to move. And it's not going to look good, and then they're going to have a save face problem again.
Now, I do want to move on to the Ukraine with Putin. That I read this yesterday, um, and I've had a chance to look through a lot of articles out of not only Ukraine. I wanted to look at Ukraine and what they had to say about this, and they are saying that it was true that basically the one area that of those states that Putin is in control of, or he's never went further than he's had Belarus, and he's refusing to hand over Crimea. But what we're seeing is there was um, the according to the African nation that went over there, they got a good look at them documents, William, and they said these are true. That it's Zelensky's signature on these. That there was Turkey when they did go over a month or two after the war had started. That Turkey did manage to get Zelensky to call a truce or cease fire for a portion of time. And then when Russia pulled out of Kiev, he shouldn't have been there. For one, he shouldn't have been there. I think he knew that. And when he pulled out, then they said, "Oh, look, we won. We chased him out," is what Zelensky said. And so we're looking at now I think Putin did it only for a response, William. I don't think he did it to prove any points. I think he is hitting a response saying, Zelensky at one time agreed, but and failed out. And then there's other agreements that was made before even 2016 that was made with previous presidents, but then after when Zelensky moved in, that he agreed to, but he's backed out only because, let's say, Boris Johnson went over there, NATO, and Nancy Pelosi, of all people, were finding.
It was Bojo, and Bojo is trying to run global foreign policy, all right? And that's what the English always try to do, is they're great smoke and mirrors type folks. That's what they're the best at in the world. So everybody else got in line because that's what they were going to do. Now, South Africa wants to be part of BRICS. So South Africa comes up, they talk to Putin. Putin says, well, look, I've got this document from X months ago, and see, they didn't want peace in the first place, but Putin's coming at it from, I don't want to rock the BRICS boat with this war, and upset China and India and whatnot. So, yeah, he's going to roll out that document and say, see, I tried peace, and peace doesn't work. But they'll be forced to the table eventually. This is just a stalling tactic by Putin. He's kept that in his vest pocket for a while for just this very
Yes.
moment.
That's what I was thinking is, why didn't he? But see, he did go to the UN, because I remember doing the news report on this, that he did go to the UN and say, hey, this is what they did. And they just were kind of shunned. So I think, like you said, he was waiting for the opportunity to bring it out and say, look, this is true.
Russia's not foolish when it comes to this stuff. What they did wrong was they didn't go and scream at the UN before the war started.
Yeah.
That was the big mistake, is not going to the world court, the court of world opinion before this war started.
Yeah.
That was their huge mistake.
He went afterwards on many occasions, but not before.
I'll bet you he goes to bed almost every night kicking himself in the ass for that.
Yeah.
Kicking himself in the ass, because he just screwed that up. He'd have been better off throwing everybody on the border, maybe a small incursion, threats, get the world stirred up, but don't really jump the border. And I've been harping on this forever. That was just his big mistake. It doesn't look like that in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. It never looks like that in the beginning when you're trying to get something accomplished. But it does when the thing takes over you. Mm-hmm. When the thing takes over your leadership. And nobody goes into a war and can manage a war. Wars manage people. People don't manage wars. And mm-hmm. This is the rule of the eternities. It never changes. Nothing. The George H.W. Bush going into Kuwait thing never happens. That was just a force of will by Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell mm-hmm. over the debacle that happened in Vietnam, that they were going to go in under the full Powell doctrine. They were going to stop once they reached their objective. And that was it. They didn't do it again. So yeah. We got mired in Iraq. We got mired in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Now we're mired in.
And we even we even let Pakistan train terrorists. And we knew about it because we knew that Schumer and Schiff was going over there multiple times.
We had to have a port to be able to get our stuff into Afghanistan. Otherwise, we had to move all of our heavy stuff in by air. Mm-hmm. So we needed that port, and Pakistan happened to have the Khyber Pass mm-hmm. to bring in the weapons. And the Khyber Pass is where Tora Bora was when Bin Laden was escaping, mm-hmm. and where Roberts Hill was, and the whole bit, when we were trying to smash Al-Qaeda. But we still needed that pass if we were going to maintain the bases we had that we were building there. Old mm-hmm. Russian bases, by the way, not, the bases were originally Russian that we just added to. And so we had to placate Pakistan. So we give them money. We look the other way when people come down into Peshawar and make their Kalashnikovs and whatnot. That's just the problem with war. Mm-hmm. War makes strange bedfellows.
Yeah, especially, with what we've seen with Iran over, talking about the Middle East. And Iran, we've known for a long time, we've been sending them pallets of money, but we've been sending pallets of money, not only there, but to Ukraine. And see, now we have this ring of fire that surrounds Israel, whether it's Hamas or it is Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihads, Gaza, Hezbollah, southern Lebanon, the Houthis, Yemen, Iranian-backed Shia militias, and not only in Iraq but Syria, and they've been succeeding with the, I'm going to say, with the blessing of this administration, to be able to put their troops and bases all the way around Israel at this point.
So after World War II, the UK capitulated and allowed the Jewish people to return home because they had all these refugees they couldn't allow to land on their ships into the United States, into the UK. So they allowed them the option to return to Palestine, which is really Philistine. They changed the name of it, but it's the place of the Philistine people. And so Israel was born, right? Now, they didn't want to do that. They had to clean up this mess after World War II, right? They were already losing India. They were losing their holdings around the rest of the world. Fine, the last thing they were concerned about was Palestine. So the Jewish people made their return back home. It doesn't mean that London wants Israel to be there today. They never wanted Israel in the first place.
No.
So the Democrats tend to follow the lead of whatever's going on in Parliament in the UK, not U.S. foreign policy. You have to remember, the Democrats care about policy here at home. They're all about local political power. Anything beyond Washington, yeah, it's whatever it is, right? It's just whatever it is, and they'll just follow the lead of whoever's going wherever. They're like the idiot kids in the neighborhood. They'll just follow the other idiot kids in the neighborhood. They're not like the lead bully guy that makes the direction. They're just following to follow because they're focused on local power. They're not focused on power outside the United States. That's why they don't have a foreign policy.
Yeah. And then they're even saying that they had very fierce clashes.
It's why the Republicans have a hard time winning here at home, because they won't focus enough on their power base to be able to project their foreign policy. Now, Republicans have a foreign policy, but they're not willing to fight for the foreign policy.
No.
But the Democrats are willing to fight for the local policy, and just whatever happens with the foreign policy is what happens. Yeah. And so we end up with this void out there in global power space, and China and Russia and anybody else that can think up the new ideas jumping into it.
Yeah.
And so you end up with this crazy crap like climate change.
Yeah. And now the new thing is we are seeing that the leaders of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas were meeting with Iran officials in Tehran this week. So there's a lot of meetings going on.
Yeah, they got to be there. The Chinese are there.
Yeah.
Iranians are there. Of course, the Palestinians got to be there. They're all in there together. They all have to do the same banking. They all have to use the same trade routes. Yeah, it's like the G7 for terrorism.
Yeah. And they're saying even Gaza was attacked big time by Israel, only because they are getting Hamas and Gaza, part of the Iran militia that's there, is now firing upon Israel. So it's, William, when I looked at it, you know, they went for this meeting, but then I started looking at, they said the Ring of Fire. And when you look from Syria to Jordan to, and I'm not saying Jordan is a part of this, but no matter where they go, it's like they're, China has been there, had a meeting with a lot of these uh, terrorist organizations. And we've seen, I think a couple weeks ago, I even had on the show that Hamas and Hezbollah and all that, and these terrorist cells are willing to join BRIC or join up with China, North Korea, and the rest to help them fight. So,
well, they don't. They're not affected by sanctions when they go through BRICS because the banking system's opaque, and so they can use BRICS dollars and get everything they need done. It makes perfect. You know, this makes perfect sense. While we're at it, I'd like to talk about Jordan a little bit. Jordan in the Middle East has been, you know, with Princess Noor and the King of Jordan, have been a place of peace for the folks in that region that don't want to be involved in war. It's been a place of refuge. They have cared about their peaceful neighbors and people fleeing violence. And I'd just like to say that from a Western perspective, Jordan has been a good balanced buffer for all the people of the Middle East. And they've stayed out of these terrorist cells, and you know, they're permeated by the terrorists and whatnot, but they've suppressed it in their region to give a place for Islamic and Arab peoples to live in peace. And we really have to, you know, when people are doing, they might not be doing all the right things, but when they're doing approximately the right things, you need to cheer them on because they're not going in the wrong direction. And Jordan has been a really good example of that. And, you know, we have to give them kudos.
Yeah, because they have really stayed pretty neutral in a lot of this, and you don't hear much about it. You hear more about Syria.
They haven't taken Israel's side. They have just been a place of peace, and you have to give credit where credit's due. And Jordan's a place where credit should be given to. And frankly, right now, Egypt is too for right now. Egypt's been a very stable place too recently. Even though they've had all the crazy stuff happening in Libya and in between near their border, even though the Arab Spring started there, that got pretty much quieted down, and they've been peaceful for quite a while. So, you know, you have to be thankful for when you have an Egypt and when you have a Jordan, that you don't have to deal with terrorism like you are in Lebanon and Syria right now. We really have to be thankful for those folks.
Yeah, we sure do. And you know, the newest thing is we had Netanyahu visited aerospace industries. He wants to do 3-system thing that with supersonics, and he said this could save Israel from the attack from all sides. He said even he wants to aim at Iran's nuclear program with
the only way to take down these supersonic things is you can't. You know, in the past, they've shot bullets with bullets. That's what this Iron Dome is. You can't do that with supersonic or with hypersonic glide weapons because they keep burying trajectory.
Yeah.
So you have to chase them down. That means you have to have a platform in space with weapons to hunt those things down, outrun them, and take them out on their trajectory. So you have to come up from behind rather than at the tip of them, because you can't target them fast enough. So they've got to boost some satellites into space, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to put some weapons in high orbit. They're geosynchronous to Israel, so they can protect Israel with them. And they're going to shop wherever they can get to platforms to boost something, 1,000 miles above Earth. 100 miles is low orbit. That's the kind of stuff where Elon Musk is putting his little galaxy of satellites. Those are only stay up for a little while and they fall out. But geosynchronous, they have to be 1,000 miles high so that they rotate at the same speed of the Earth, so they're always over the same place on Earth. And that takes some special boost. That's not just your average rocket into space. So they need boost like you need to go to the moon to get those satellites up there. And the satellites they want to put up there will probably have weapons on it. Weapons are heavy, so they have to have a super heavy boost. So they're going to be shopping, and we should expect them to. Anybody that's threatened on Earth with hypersonic glide weapons are going to be doing the same thing. We just have to expect it. That's what happens when technology burgeons into the world. Everybody has to catch up.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to be doing the same thing.
Now, Netanyahu.
This isn't aberrant behavior. This is self-preservation behavior. So, yeah, it is what it is. We don't have to really like it, but we shouldn't be surprised by it.
Now, Netanyahu met with the State Department spokesman, Matthew Miller, and he said what he wants to let them know is there's an objective. He said, number one, I want Iran to take steps to de-escalate tensions, which of course includes steps to curb its nuclear program. Number two, we want Iran to cease and its actions of destabilizing the region, including its support for groups that carry on attacks. And number three, we want Iran to stop its support for Russia's war on Ukraine. Four, we believe that Iran should release Americans who continues to wrongfully be detained since Israel released who they had.
So the last two is just rhetoric. Okay, that's just what you add when you don't really want to say what it is you want. They want one of two things. They either want to have the ability to shoot down the hypersonic glide weapons that could be nuclear tipped, okay, or they're going to destroy Iran's nuclear program. Now, they don't want to have to go to war with Iran. They're going to seek any way out they can before going to war. But what you're hearing right now is the language of, we're doing everything we can, but if this doesn't work, kids, get out of the way.
Yeah, and I think that, when he made the ultimatum, the step 1, 2, 3, and 4, Netanyahu usually don't do that. He usually says, he makes a speech and he says, we're not going to tolerate this. But he has made I think it's even an 8-step plan is what it ended up being, that they have to stick to this. And he says they don't do sanctions against Iran. They just go to war. Now, Karen was...
He's a hawk, and his tendency is to just, if something threatens Israel, kill it.
Mm-hmm.
That's his.
And he knows that they're totally capable.
His father or grandfather was a general, but he has to placate the Democrats he has in his own population, because he doesn't have absolute power in Israel right now. But the second that they've exhausted all these diplomatic means, they're off to the races. I mean, it's going to be the next minute. They exhaust it. The next minute, they're off to the races.
Yeah.
They're not going to wait for tomorrow.
Let's see. One of the last things I want to talk about is me and you talked about this new party of, well, Karen, first of all, Karen, I just want to let you know that they do fire weapons back and forth because you got Iranian militia that's always going to shoot something at Israel, and then Israel will fire back. But what we're talking about today is the ultimatum of Iran's nuclear energy and nuclear war that they want to go after Israel with.
But we're not talking about rockets fired from Syria and
Right.
Lebanon. These little rockets. That's just a proxy war, just like the United States has a proxy war in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
Iran has a proxy war with Israel through those people.
Yeah.
And they're funding ISIS and the Palestinians and Hamas. I'm sorry, not the Palestinians right now. The Palestinians are actually trying to stay out of this thing.
Right.
If
they are.
Can, please God, because nobody's coming to their rescue. They don't have any contiguous land area to connect to, say, Lebanon or whatever. So the Palestinians are trying to stay out of it.
It's Hamas.
They're going to get run over by it because they're Islamic. Right? Let's just be honest. So that's happening. But what we're talking about is the 3 big bombs or 4 big bombs that Iran wants to lob into Israel that are nuclear tipped, that are going to wipe out the entire country in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talking about 4 heavies. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about all this peon little firecracker missile things.
That's what they're doing right now.
That's just an irritation.
Yeah.
That's an irritation. Israel can deal with that. They can't deal with heavies coming in on hypersonic glide vehicles. And that's a major problem.
Yeah. And now, lastly, we were talking with before the show about there is a good possibility that with political parties right now, we have Democrats that aren't quite agreeing with their own liberals. We have the same thing with the GOP. And you're talking there could be a people's party that comes out of this. And I'm starting to think that, yeah.
We're seeing a fragmentation of the parties. They've become so extreme that the moderates on the left want a way out. The America First people in the Republican Party want a way out. And what we're going to eventually see is an America First party and then whatever else is left. And it's going to look different than what we have now. I think the Republicans know that now. I think that the Democrats are starting to feel it now. It's not just, Trump anymore. They recognize now it's whole red parts of the country that they can't reconcile with. And they're going to want to consolidate their power. And so are the red states. And so if the second there's an opportunity for the left to consolidate, the moderate left to consolidate, and the farther right to consolidate, I guess they call them farther right. Actually, they're more liberal Republicans. They're more Jeffersonian type Republicans. The middle are going to throw off these extreme elements on either side and grab hold of their own party somehow. And it's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
The political leaders are looking at short term. They're looking at quarterly profits when they need to be looking at out 30 years, and they just can't do it. They're too old. There's a younger group coming in, and they're going to take over whatever's left of this mess that's really a legacy from the Cold War. This is a Cold War legacy administration. We got a new Cold War now. We got dynamic new threats, and these people are going to get pushed to the side because they're not able at this point anymore to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Not with their politics, not with their friendships, not with their loyalties, and they're going to be swept aside. That's the thing about the United States. You know, we haven't been. We're not taken apart 1,000 times a century like some democratic societies. Every month is something new in these socialist democratic states. But the United States has been paved over about 4 times in its history, and we're watching the 5th wave of the United States being reborn. That's what we do here. Nothing lasts forever. So every time that happens, you know, we went from the Industrial Revolution to the Electrical Revolution, now to the Information Revolution. We're going to go to the subatomic revolution next after that. We're already starting the subatomic revolution with AI. Everything's going to get run over, and these guys aren't ready for it. They're rooted in the past, and the weight of history is just going to crush them, and they can't accept it, and it's just going to happen. And it's sad because they're going to kick and scream the entire way and make it miserable for the rest of us, but it just is what it is.
Is there anything you want to add to tonight's show that we missed? I know there's always something I seem to miss that you want to catch up on before I move on.
Well, so we've seen this peace letter come out from Putin. We've seen the African National Union come north and say, you know, we could really live without this war. It's driving up the cost of fuel. It's driving up the cost of food. It's making us more vulnerable to China. Could you please just capitulate on this thing and shut it down? I get it that the Ukrainians want their territory back. Okay? If Texas was invaded, I'd want it back too. But Eastern Ukraine's ruined.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was mentioned early on, though, William.
Parents have given up their children over their property. They've sent their children out. They'll never see them again.
You know what gets me, though, William, is early on, one of the first reports I got from Eva Bartlett was what Putin doesn't take, Poland's going to step in and take from Ukraine or Germany. I can't remember if it was. See, that's not even right either.
Doesn't shut this down while Ukraine has some fighting capacity. It's going to become Greater Poland or Greater Germany or Greater.
See, that's not any better than what Russia just did. I mean, helping's one thing, but
well, the difference is they're going to invite them in because they're going to be so war crushed that they're going to need every penny. So if they want to be, and remember, Russia and the Eastern Bloc nations, they've only been 30 years without communism. Communism is just the most corrupt thing ever. It's a mafia with you know, a military, and we can't expect them to be on the same level as the democratic socialists of Western Europe. That's going to take them another 70 years. But Ukraine also needs to understand that if they don't maintain some of their autonomy from this war, they're going to have no autonomy.
Yeah.
They're going to have people in other countries deciding on what happens in their country. They have some weapons right now. They have some fighting capacity. Back out of this while they still have greater Ukraine. It makes sense for Ukraine at this point. It might not make sense for the UK. It might not make sense for the United States. It might not make even sense for Russia. But if it makes sense for Ukraine, save Ukraine to the extent you can, because you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you just have to take what's good enough if you don't want to lose the whole thing. So my admonition, I guess, or opinion to the Ukrainian people is, please protect the autonomy you can, because you don't want to be subservient to some foreign government that doesn't care about you. And you're going to be a long time going through this process. The Soviet Union's gone. It's not going to be like it was for Poland right after the fall of the wall, because Poland was closer to assets, big money assets in Germany than Ukraine and Bulgaria and Romania was. It's going to take you guys a lot longer, and you know what I'm talking about. So protect yourselves if you want to have your own autonomy, because you care about your land. You care about that your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents for 70 generations have been on this land. If you want to maintain it, if you want to maintain control of it, protect your capacity to be able to defend it. Otherwise, it'll get taken from you. There's no free lunches in this world, even though, you know, maybe Boris Johnson has come over and told you there isn't. And be wise, because this thing can get a lot worse than it is. Okay, that's, you know, we care about people. I care about people. I think most people in the United States care about people. This thing you've got going on in the Donbass is a civil war that is a meat grinder and is going to go nowhere. And I think everybody knows it, because no major land war has been able to be prosecuted without a superpower air force in the last 100 years, since World War II. You don't have that. You're not going to have that. F-16s are not going to make a difference if you had, 500 of them, because you don't have air dominance. You don't have strike aircraft. You don't have air-to-air or ground air suppression. You don't have jamming. You just don't have the Air Force capable of protecting an army in the field, and you need to protect that army in the field to be able to take and hold land. You don't have that. Save your country while you can still save what you've got. All right.
Okay, well, that's it. And we say subscribe and share, hit that like button. And if you're over on Facebook, follow and like our show and ring the bell to make sure you're up to date. And as you can see, we're over here on Investigator News Network for our news. And that's just to keep us from losing Investigator News too. So, William, great host tonight. You were very informative. And
please everybody find a peaceful solution if you can before conflict, because it's god awful destabilizing. It doesn't hurt just you. It hurts everyone on a planet.
So, Okay, well, everyone have a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you tomorrow. It'd be me with the news and weather and lifestyle news, and then, of course, the end of the week with trivia. So, William, great show. We're looking forward to your Monday show, and then us coming back in 1 week for the World War III show. So, all
Thanks,
right,
Ellie.
all right. God bless everyone, and we'll see you soon.